Her hair was pulled into a loose bun. The collar of her second-hand navy blouse was frayed, and her ID badge hung askew, brushing against her chest as she moved. None of it mattered. She didn't come here to impress. She came to serve. A quiet knock landed on her doorframe. She didn't look up immediately. "Please tell me you're not here to drop off more Medicaid paperwork," she muttered, fingers still dancing over the keys. "No, ma'am," a voice replied, calm, low, with just the right mix of polite and amused. Her eyes lifted, and for a moment she stilled. He stood tall, dressed in an ivory coat so perfectly tailored it clung to his frame like second skin. His jawline sharp, his eyes, hazel, not brown, clear enough to feel like they were asking a question. No clipboard, no awkward nervousness, just quiet composure. "Hello, my wonderful and beautiful family. Welcome once again to Love and Twilight with Dr. Phillips. I am so happy to have you here, because today's story is one that will touch your heart in a very special way. But before we step into this powerful journey together, please do me a small favor. Tap the like button, subscribe, and join our growing Love and Twilight family, where every story brings us closer and reminds us of the beauty of love, life, and second chances. Now sit back, relax, and get ready, because what you're about to hear will keep you at the edge of your seat. Let's dive right in. I'm Dr. Mandy Everhart," he said, stepping into the cramped office space. "I was told you're the person to speak to about community collaboration." "That depends," Gertie said, sitting up straighter. "You selling hope or funding?" That made him laugh. Not a rehearsed chuckle, but something honest and surprising. "Hopefully both." She gestured toward the cracked leather chair across from her. "Have a seat. If it doesn't collapse under you, maybe we'll talk." He eased into the chair, long legs folding with grace. The Rolex on his wrist caught the light. His shoes, undoubtedly Italian, were a clean shade of brown that had no business existing on this side of town. This man was not from around here, not in spirit, not in struggle, and yet he didn't look uncomfortable. He looked curious. "Nice setup," he said, scanning the overstuffed file cabinet and the stack of manila folders stacked like makeshift bookshelves. "This used to be a storage closet," Gertie replied. "I won it in a turf war with the receptionist. Her plants didn't survive the darkness." He smiled again. "I heard you're the heart of this place." "I'm the engine," she corrected. "Hearts are too soft. I keep it running." Mandy leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Good, because engines move things. That's what I'm here for." She raised a brow. "I'm building an outreach initiative," he continued. "Surgical follow-ups for patients who get released too early. We've been seeing a lot of recidivism. Some end up right back in the ER because they don't have the support. I want to change that." She eyed him. "From buckhead to bankhead, you just want to change that?" "I want to partner with people who've been doing this work longer than I have," he replied, unbothered. "People who know the terrain. People like me." "Exactly." Gertie folded her arms. "So what's the catch?" "No catch. Just funding, transportation logistics, clinic space, and maybe a little trust." That last word made her flinch inside. Not visibly, but something stirred. "Why here?" she asked. "You could do this with the big nonprofits, folks with infrastructure, PR machines." "I could," Mandy admitted. "But I heard about you from one of our patients. They said you don't just treat the symptoms, you ask questions." Her lips twitched. Not a smile. "Not yet. But close." He added, "Besides, your clinic's been running on fumes and determination for too long. I figured if I could convince the engine, maybe the whole system would run smoother." A silence settled between them. Not tense, just full. "Tell me what you really want, Dr. Everhart," she said finally. "I want you to let me walk this neighborhood with you, understand what works, what doesn't, meet the people, and maybe let me buy you a meal." She tilted her head. "There it is. No agenda," he said quickly. "I just think it's hard to do partnership without conversation, and conversation goes better over food, and food always leads to flirtation." "Not always," he said, voice soft, "but I won't pretend I'm not intrigued." She stared at him. Tall, polished, confident, dangerous in a way that wasn't arrogant, but sure. Men like him? They weren't meant to walk into her world, and if they did, they never stayed. Still, something in his tone made her pause. Not what he said, but how. "I don't date doctors," she said bluntly. He grinned. That's oddly specific, because it's a rule. What happened? Did one break your heart? No, she replied. I just don't need anyone looking at me like I'm some community service project. I'm not here to fix you, Gertie. Her name in his mouth sounded warmer than she liked. I'm here because I want to build something real, he said. And I think you do too. She didn't answer. Instead, she opened a drawer, pulled out a flyer for the next community board meeting, and handed it to him. If you're serious, be there. Tuesday night, no cameras, no branding, no speech. He took the paper gently, then stood. Tuesday night it is. As he turned to leave, he stopped at the doorframe. I hope you'll let me see you again. You just did, she shot back. He laughed, walking away. Gertie waited until she was sure he was gone, then leaned back in her chair and let out a slow breath. She wasn't sure what just happened, but she hadn't felt this alert in a long time. Tuesday came fast. The community center was packed, plastic chairs shoulder to shoulder, elders in wide, hats fanning themselves while teens leaned against the walls, pretending not to care. Gertie stood up front, clipboard in hand, voice cutting through the static of the malfunctioning mic. We keep getting overlooked because we stop showing up. If we want access, we can't afford silence. She glanced up briefly and saw him. Mandy had come alone. No entourage, no clipboard, no grand entrance. Just a plain black button-down rolled at the sleeves, fitted slacks, and that watch again. Less of a flex this time and more like a familiar tick. He didn't interrupt, didn't try to speak. He just watched her, fully, like she was the only voice that mattered in the room. After the meeting, Gertie slipped outside to breathe. The air was heavy with heat and the scent of food trucks lined up by the curb. Fried fish, roasted corn, and thick jollof rice cooked in oversized aluminum pans. Mandy approached casually, hands tucked into his pockets. You didn't tell them what they wanted to hear, he said. I'm not in the business of comfort. No, he nodded. You're in the business of truth. She studied him. Still want to buy me a meal? That depends. Are you hungry? She hesitated, then pointed to a vendor run by a woman in a ghillie who was shouting orders like a general. If you can handle the heat, we'll talk. They found a patch of grass under a tree, both holding styrofoam trays of jollof rice, grilled chicken, and fried plantain. He took his first bite, immediately coughing. What is this, lava? Gertie smirked, popping a plantain into her mouth. You'll survive. Mandy blinked rapidly, eyes watering, then started laughing. This is how you welcome your partners? Trial by fire? You're still standing, aren't you? He took another bite, slower this time. Careful, but determined. He muttered, reaching for a water bottle. You weren't joking. You think I play about jollof? I don't think you play at all, he said. That's what I like about you. Her hand paused, midair. I'm used to people nodding politely, saying what they think I want to hear. You? You say what needs to be said. She shrugged. Doesn't make me likable. Maybe not to most, but I'm not most. A silence fell between them. This time, charged. Gertie looked away, focusing on the children running past with melted popsicles and untied shoelaces. You're not from here. No. But you're trying. I'm not trying, Mandy said. I'm committing. That word. She didn't trust it. What's your story? She asked. People like you don't just show up here on principle. My story's simple, he said. My dad died waiting in a public hospital line while a private facility sat half empty down the street. That shaped me. She turned to him slowly. I don't want pity projects. I want equity. We don't have to beg for scraps. We can build. Gertie leaned back against the tree, her tray balanced on her knees. You talk a lot like a politician. Mandy tilted his head. That an insult? Depends on the politician. He grinned. I'm not here for applause, Gertie. I'm here for impact. She nodded slowly, watching the breeze lift a curl of his hair. So, do you date your partners? He looked at her directly. I don't have rules about that. I do. He waited. She set her tray down. I don't date men who see this, she motioned around her, as novelty. I see it as necessary, he replied. And I see you as extraordinary. That did it. Her guard twitched, but didn't fall. Careful, she said. That almost sounded like a line. He smiled. It wasn't. She reached into her purse and handed him a worn flyer. Food truck Friday. Same time, same location. You're inviting me? I'm warning you. If you come back, I'll assume you're serious. He accepted the flyer. I'll be there. As she stood, he rose with her. They were close now, barely an inch of space between them. He didn't reach for her, didn't push, but she felt his presence like heat. I'll walk you to your car, he said. No need. I know. But let me anyway. They walked in silence. At her car, she fumbled for her keys. He stepped back, giving her space. She opened the door, turned to him, eyes narrowing. You're patient. I've learned that things worth building take time. She paused. You're still not getting a date. He chuckled. I'm not asking. Yet. She got in and shut the door. He stepped back and nodded once before turning to leave. Gertie sat behind the wheel, heartbeat steady, but her hands trembled slightly against the steering. She wasn't used to men showing up without demanding, without claiming space they hadn't earned. But Mandy Everhart was earning something, slowly, carefully, and that made her nervous. Friday evening came with the scent of grilled meat in the air and music thumping from old speakers tied to streetlight poles. The lot was alive, vendors shouting prices, teenagers weaving through cars, uncles trading domino slaps at plastic tables. Gertie stood by the jerk chicken stand, phone in one hand, eyes scanning. She wasn't nervous. She didn't get nervous. Not for men. Not anymore. Then she saw him. Mandy walked up in jeans and a soft white shirt, sleeves rolled just like last time. No lab coat. No watch. Just him. Simpler. Still sharp. Still dangerous. I made it, he said. Didn't think you would, she replied. You told me not to show unless I was serious. I'm here. She handed him a skewer of peppered beef. Start with this. If you survive that, we'll talk. He took a bite. His eyes went wide. He exhaled hard, coughed, and then broke into a grin. Okay, I see what this is. She smirked. Your mouth ain't ready. He nodded through the burn, chewing carefully. Neither is my pride. But I'll endure. They walked through the crowd, slowly. He asked questions, real ones, about the families in the neighborhood, the churches that had closed, the schools that had changed hands so many times the community had stopped expecting consistency. And she answered, not all of it, but enough. They found a quieter corner behind the library wall where the light was dimmer and the air wasn't thick with smoke and voices. He leaned against the bricks. She stayed standing. You know what I like about you? Mandy said, softly. Gertie raised an eyebrow. This should be good. You don't try to charm anyone, not even a little. Charm's a performance. I prefer function. He nodded. And still, you're the most magnetic woman I've met. You don't know me. I'm learning. She looked at him. He didn't flinch under her gaze. You think you want me, she said, but you want the version you built in your head. Then show me the version I should want. Gertie stepped closer, arms still folded. I'm tired. I work 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. I can't remember the last time I shaved my legs. My apartment smells like Lysol and despair. I fall asleep with grant proposals under my arm. I have stretch marks older than your car. Good, he replied. Because I didn't come looking for a performance. I came looking for a woman. She should have turned away. Instead, she asked, what exactly do you want? He looked at her for a moment, not rushing, not pushing. Then, I want to walk with you. I want to learn your world, and if you let me, I want to love you the way no one ever dared. Gertie's breath caught. She hated how much her stomach twisted at his words. I don't do fairy tales, she whispered. Neither do I, he replied. I'm offering you something real. A long silence passed. Then she stepped in, just close enough. I told you I don't date doctors. He nodded. Then let's not call it a date. What would you call it? A beginning. That night they sat in her living room, feet tucked beneath them, half-finished takeout boxes. Between them and a documentary playing in the background that neither of them paid attention to. Mandy glanced at her often. She noticed but didn't comment. She finally asked, why aren't you married? He paused, then shrugged. Timing, focus. Maybe no one held me the way I needed. And how's that? Without trying to fix me. Gertie looked away. He added, why aren't you married? Same reasons. Plus a few I'm not ready to say out loud. Mandy nodded. fair. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful, shared. He moved first, reached over and took her hand, not rushed, just held it. "You're beautiful," he said. She exhaled. "Careful. I mean it. You always talk this smooth?" "No," he replied. "I just talk honest." He moved closer. The air shifted. "May I?" he asked. She didn't answer, just leaned in. Their lips met softly, nothing wild, nothing forced, just pressure, warm, testing, then deeper. Her hand rose to his jaw. His slid around her waist. She hadn't been kissed like this in a long time. With respect, with heat beneath it, sure, but not hunger for the sake of it. More like appreciation. When they parted, he looked at her and said, "That wasn't a performance." "No," she whispered. "It wasn't." He stood after a while, slow and sure. "Will I see you tomorrow?" he asked. She hesitated. "I have work." "So do I." "But I'll make time." She opened the door, leaning on the frame. "You don't scare easy, do you?" "I'm more afraid of not trying." He walked out into the night, turning back just once. She closed the door quietly and leaned her forehead against it. Her rule had just bent, maybe even broken, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel foolish for it. She felt awake. The meeting had gone longer than expected. Again, it always did when Gertie spoke. She hadn't planned to say much that night. Just a few notes about grant restructuring and updates on follow-up protocols, but someone had brought up insurance loopholes, and then another mentioned a disabled elder turned away at urgent care, and suddenly her voice was rising, firm and passionate, like it always did when the stakes were people. By the end of her speech, the room had gone quiet. Not from boredom, never that, but because she'd said what others wouldn't. Her words carried weight, and when she walked out into the parking lot, the night air felt sharper, crisper, like it was still humming from the fire she'd left behind. She didn't realize he'd followed her until his shadow broke from the building's edge. Mandy, hands in his pockets, lips curled in something halfway between admiration and something deeper. He didn't speak at first, just watched her walk toward her car. She glanced at him once, then looked away. "Don't sneak up on people," she said. "You weren't sneaking," he replied. "You were glowing." She scoffed. "Don't start." "I mean it," he said, walking closer. "That room couldn't keep up with you. You're laying it on thick." He stopped a few feet away, eyes steady. "I'm not laying anything. I'm stating facts." She leaned against the hood of her car, arms crossed. "You followed me. I wanted a moment. You had a moment." "Inside?" "No," he said. "That was public. I wanted something just for me." The words landed heavier than expected. Gertie felt it in her throat, in the sudden stillness between them. She studied him. His jaw was tense. His shirt had a slight wrinkle on one side, like he'd leaned against a wall earlier and didn't bother to fix it. There was no performance here. He wasn't charming. He was just watching her like she was something he didn't want to misstep with. "You're intoxicating when you speak like that," he said, voice softer now. Her chest tightened. "You don't even know me," she said. "I know enough to want more." He stepped forward, slowly, like he was giving her time to stop him. She didn't. He stood close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Clean, warm, not overpowering, just like him. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't what?" "Don't make this into something it's not." Mandy nodded once. "Okay." But then he reached for her face gently, fingertips grazing her jaw, and before she could second-guess it, their mouths met. It wasn't a rushed kiss. It wasn't driven by impulse or adrenaline. It was intentional. His lips moved against hers with a patience she wasn't ready for. His hands didn't roam. They stayed right there, one on her cheek, the other on her waist, anchoring her, holding her like a question and an answer all at once. She kissed him back. Her hands fisted the sides of his shirt, pulling him in until their bodies aligned, heat meeting heat, restraint thinning between them. When they pulled apart, Gertie didn't speak for a moment. Her breath came out shakier than she liked. "That was reckless," she murmured. "No," he replied, voice low. "That was real." They stood in the quiet buzz of the parking lot, a street lamp flickering above them. "Come over," she said suddenly. Mandy blinked. "Are you sure?" "No," she said, "but come anyway." 30 minutes later, they stood in her apartment, small, clean, and dimly lit. The city moved faintly outside her window, but in here, time seemed to still. She poured him a drink. He didn't take it, just set it down on the counter, then turned to face her fully. "Do you always move like this?" he asked. "I don't move at all," she replied. "You're the first shift I've made in years." Mandy stepped forward again. No hesitation this time. He kissed her slower this time, deeper, and when his hands touched her waist again, this time, they slid beneath the hem of her shirt. She didn't stop him. She undressed slowly, not out of performance, but out of reverence. Her blouse hit the floor, followed by her bra, then her pants. No makeup to wipe, no angles to hold, just her. He didn't touch her immediately. He looked, and then he breathed. "You are breathtaking." She wasn't used to that. Not naked, not raw, but Mandy moved like he'd been waiting to memorize her. He kissed down her neck, across her collarbone, over each curve like it mattered. When he knelt, his hands gripped her thighs like they belonged there. His mouth met her center, and the first sound she made was a gasp she hadn't meant to let go. His tongue moved slowly, rhythmically, like he had time, like he intended to learn her with his mouth before anything else. She cried out, back arching. He didn't stop. She clutched the couch behind her, knees shaking. When she came, it was with a force that surprised even her. Mandy stood, lifting her into his arms. He carried her to the bedroom, laid her gently on the bed, and removed the last of his clothes. She stared up at him, body bare, heart pounding. "You good?" he whispered. "Yes," she said. "Then let me show you." He kissed her again as they lay tangled in half-lit shadows, his mouth hungry yet reverent. Not rushed, not careless. His weight shifted gently over hers, a warmth that wrapped around her like a vow. Gertie had been touched before, but never like this. Mandy traced the slope of her neck with his lips, then paused at the swell of her breast, letting his hand cradle it before his mouth followed. The second his tongue met her nipple, she gasped, a short, stunned sound that caught him by surprise. He groaned softly in response, like her pleasure was his own. She arched into him as he sucked and teased. His hand slid lower, fingers moving with calculated patience over her stomach, past the curve of her hips, then between her thighs. He didn't rush. His fingers found her center, slick with anticipation, and he moaned against her chest. "You feel like something I've been missing," he whispered. "Then don't stop." He didn't. He moved down again, lips grazing her ribcage, her abdomen, slow and determined. When his mouth reached the soft space between her thighs, he didn't dive in. He lingered, let her legs part for him, let her body speak. And when he finally tasted her, she cried out, raw and unguarded. He licked slowly, dragging his tongue in rhythm with her heartbeat, fingers, stroking her softly, alternating between teasing and claiming. Her back bowed, her breath staggered. One hand gripped the edge of the headboard, the other tangled in his curls. He didn't come up for air until she shattered on his mouth, trembling beneath. Him, legs tense around his shoulders, breath ragged and begging. Still, he didn't stop. He coaxed another one from her, then another. By the third, she was whimpering his name, Mandy. Mandy, please. Only then did he rise. She watched him as he climbed back up her body, kissing his way to her lips. She could taste herself on his tongue. She didn't care. "I'm not done," he said, voice husky. "Then don't be." He positioned himself between her legs, his eyes locked on hers. "No one's ever taken their time with me like that," she said. "They didn't deserve to." When he pushed inside her, her breath caught again, not from pain but from fullness, from the deliberate depth of his entrance. They both froze for a moment, their bodies adjusting, their chests pressed tight. His forehead rested against hers. "Gertie," he murmured. "You feel like home." She almost cried at that. He began to move, slow and deep, each thrust a declaration. Her legs wrapped around him, pulling him closer. He kissed her with every stroke, hands cupping her jaw, fingers buried in her hair. It wasn't just sex, it was surrender. She met him, breath for breath, groan for groan. Her nails scraped down his back, leaving marks he didn't flinch from. He gripped her hips harder, pushing into her with purpose now. Faster, deeper. Their bodies rocked in sync. The bed creaked beneath them. Again she gasped. "I've got you." He flipped her onto her side, spooned behind her, and slid in again. The new angle pulled another moan from her lips. He thrust steadily, lips at her shoulder, hand around her neck, not choking, just holding, anchoring. "I need more," she begged. He pulled her on top of him without speaking. She straddled him, dizzy from the transition, but took him in again with one motion. He groaned, hands resting firmly on her hips. "Ride me," he said. She did. She moved with purpose, rolling her hips slow and deep, the friction unbearable. Her breasts bounced with every thrust, and he sat up to kiss them, suck them, claim them again. She held his face in her hands, stared into his eyes, and moved harder. "I'm close," she said. "Let go. I can't." He grabbed her hips, slammed into her from beneath, and whispered, "Let me take you there." That broke her. She came again, a sob of pleasure escaping her throat. He followed seconds later, his own climax shaking him, buried inside her, both gasping. They collapsed together, sweaty, spent, silent. For a long moment, neither moved. Only the sound of their breathing filled the room. Then Mandy pulled the sheet over her and kissed her forehead. His voice was hoarse. "I want more than your body, Gertie." She opened her eyes, stunned at the softness in his tone. "I want your fight, your fire, your mornings, your madness." She blinked hard. No one had ever said that to her. Ever. He kissed her again, softer this time, then tucked her against his chest, like she was something he wanted to protect, not possess. And for the first time in years, she let herself rest in someone's arms without guilt, without a clock ticking, without shame. The early morning light peeked in through the blinds, casting soft shadows across the room. Gertie stirred, her cheek pressed against Mandy's bare chest, his steady heartbeat thumping beneath her ear. She should have felt awkward, exposed, but instead she felt held, in a way that had nothing to do with the arms wrapped around her. Mandy's fingers lazily trailed patterns across her spine. He hadn't said much since they drifted off in a tangle of limbs and sheets. But now, his voice found her. "Are you always this quiet in the morning?" he asked. "I'm thinking," she replied. "About what?" "If I regret letting you in." He chuckled, the sound low and rough. "And I haven't decided yet." "Well," he murmured, brushing his lips over her forehead, "let me give you a reason not to." She pulled back slightly to look at him. His eyes weren't smug. They weren't begging either, just open. "I meant what I said last night," he continued. "I don't just want your body, Gertie. I heard you. I don't think you believed me." She sat up, pulling the sheet around her chest. "What makes you think I need more than what we already had? Because you talk like you've built a fortress. I have, and yet you opened the door." "That was a moment," she said. "No," he replied, sitting up beside her. "That was truth." She looked away, jaw tightening. "You don't know what you're asking for." "I'm not asking for perfection," he said. "I'm asking for your fire." Gertie turned to him. "Fire burns." "Exactly." His voice was steady. "I want your fight," he said. "I want the part of you that snaps back at injustice, that stays up reading policies, that rolls her eyes at lazy men, and walks away from cheap affection." She blinked. "I want the mornings when you don't want to talk, and the nights when you collapse from exhaustion. I want the woman who cusses under her breath when her funding gets cut and still shows up the next day." She swallowed hard. "I want your flaws, your scars, the parts you think make you unlovable, because those are the parts that make you, you." No one had ever said that to her. Men had wanted her curves, her confidence, her commitment, but never the whole of her, never the weight she carried, with her shoulders squared and her heart armored. "I don't need saving," she whispered. "I'm not trying to save you," Mandy said. "I want to walk beside you." He reached out, his hand brushing her jaw. "You've been surviving alone for so long, you forgot what it feels like to be chosen without having to audition." Her eyes glassed over. He leaned forward and kissed her, gentle this time, lips lingering. When they broke apart, she said, "You're not going to give up, are you?" "No," he replied. "Not unless you tell me to." She nodded, blinking back heat behind her eyes. "You should shower. Before work." He grinned. "You trying to kick me out?" "I'm trying to preserve what little emotional stability I have left." He laughed softly. "Fair. Mandy stood and walked to the bathroom, unapologetically naked, and she watched him go, realizing that even the way he moved felt unbothered by performance. Once the door shut, Gertie sat in the quiet. Her fingers traced the edge of the sheet. She had built rules around herself like armor. Clear lines, boundaries. But last night hadn't just crossed them, it had redrawn them. She still didn't know what this was, what it could be. But she knew one thing, he wasn't playing. And maybe, just maybe, neither was she. Later that morning, Mandy returned to the clinic. He didn't act different, didn't wink or pull her aside or treat her like a secret. He walked into the staff meeting like a partner, prepared, present, professional. Afterward, he paused in the hallway, just briefly. "You good?" he asked. She nodded. He squeezed her hand once, quick, then walked away. And for the first time in years, Gertie realized that letting someone in didn't always mean losing herself. Sometimes it meant being seen fully and not having to shrink. Gertie smoothed her locks in the mirror again, then sighed. "Why am I nervous?" she muttered, pacing across the rug in her bedroom. It was a rhetorical question, of course. She already knew the answer. She was going to meet Mandy's family. And not just any family, the Everharts. Old Atlanta money, think tank endowments, real estate roots stretching back 3 generations. Power wrapped in manners and manicured reputations. They didn't just donate to hospitals. They had buildings named after them. And Mandy had asked her to join them for Sunday dinner. "You don't have to prove anything," he'd told her that morning. But that wasn't the point. She wasn't worried about not impressing them. She was worried about hating them. The Everhart estate was tucked behind wrought iron gates in a cul-de-sac that didn't even show up on Google Maps. The house was big but understated, whitewashed brick, ivy, along the sides, and a porch that whispered generational wealth without having to scream it. Mandy opened her car door, reached for her hand. "Breathe." "I am breathing," she said, but her palm was sweating. "You're squeezing my fingers like I owe you rent." She laughed, despite herself. "Shut up." They walked up the front steps together. The door opened before they knocked. "Finally," said a woman in her 60s, elegant in a linen blouse, natural curls swept into a bun. She had cheekbones sharp enough to slice and eyes that missed nothing. "Mom," Mandy said with a soft smile. "This is Gertie." Diane Everhart looked her up and down, quick but not unkind. Then she extended her hand. "I've heard a lot about you." Gertie accepted it. "Good things, I hope. Let's say, accurate things." Diane's tone wasn't dismissive. If anything, it sounded like quiet approval disguised as critique. Inside, the house felt like an art gallery and a history archive had a baby. Original paintings, vintage photographs, of marches and protests, antique jazz records stacked next to awards from Harvard and Spelman. The dining room table was long, polished, and already set. Mandy's younger sister, Aria, sat at one end, scrolling through her phone, and his cousin Marcus. A lawyer with a fresh fade and designer loafers offered her a smile that looked practiced. Everyone was polite, too polite. Small talk skimmed the surface of everything. Gertie answered questions about her job, her background, her childhood, but always with caution. She wasn't ashamed. She just wasn't sure how much of her truth would land well in a room full of legacy. Until Diane spoke. "I started out in a clinic not much different from yours," she said, slicing her lamb chop with delicate precision. Gertie looked up. "Really?" "West Baltimore," Diane replied. "Before I went corporate, before I traded courtrooms for boardrooms." Gertie tilted her head. "What made you switch?" Diane paused. "My second miscarriage. I needed stability. I had bills and grief and a husband who traveled too much. Advocacy became donation. Speeches replaced protests." Her eyes locked with Gertie's. "You remind me of me." Mandy watched quietly, smiling behind his wine glass. Diane added, "Don't let marriage soften your spine. The world still needs your fire." That was the first moment Gertie exhaled without thinking. Later, while Mandy took a call outside, Diane found her on the back porch. "I like you," she said bluntly. "Thank you. But liking you doesn't mean it'll be easy." "I'm not asking for easy," Gertie replied. Diane gave her a long, measured look. "Good, because our family may look graceful, but it comes with weight, expectations. We walk into rooms with assumptions already made about us. You won't get to be invisible. I've never been invisible." And that's exactly why I think you'll survive us. Gertie stared ahead at the garden. I'm not trying to survive. I'm trying to build. Diane nodded. Then you and Mandy are already ahead of where I was. There was a pause. Then, Diane said softly, he's never brought anyone home before. Gertie turned. Never? Not even close. That, Silence said, more than anything else. In the car on the way back, Gertie stared out the window. They're nice, she said. You hated it, Mandy guessed. I didn't hate it. But I don't fit. He reached over and took her hand. You don't have to fit. Just stand. She gave him a sidelong glance. Easy for you to say. Not really, he said. You haven't met your people yet. The smell of collard greens, baked macaroni, and cornbread hit Mandy as soon as he stepped into the house. Gertie had warned him, multiple times, that Sunday dinner with her family wasn't a casual affair. It was tradition, rooted deep. It was full plates and full opinions, often served hot without being asked for. Still, he hadn't expected the heir to feel this. Tight, her grandmother's house in Bankhead was warm and cramped, walls lined with family photos and decades of hand-me-down wisdom. Every corner of the living room held some kind of memory. They stepped in together. Gertie's arm looped through his, but the room went quiet, like someone had flipped a switch. Her father, a broad-shouldered man with deep laugh lines that weren't laughing tonight, sat at the head of the table. His eyes locked on Mandy immediately. No smile. Her brother Dion leaned against the hallway wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Her aunt was in the kitchen, stirring a pot but not bothering to look up. Her mother was the only one who stepped forward. Gertie gave a soft smile. Mama. Her mother hugged her, brief but sincere, then turned her eyes toward Mandy. You must be the doctor, she said. I am, Mandy replied, offering a handshake. She accepted it. Her grip was light, her gaze sharp. We've heard a lot. I hope good things, he said with a light chuckle. Her lips barely moved. We'll find out. Dinner was tense. Mandy sat beside Gertie at the long table, trying not to look too polished, too prepared. But he felt the weight of every glance. Her father didn't hide his scrutiny. His questions were sharp and fast. What kind of doctor are you again? Trauma surgery, Mandy answered, passing a bowl of sweet potatoes to Gertie. So, you fix broken people? In a sense, yes. Her father's jaw tensed. Interesting. Dion muttered something under his breath. Gertie shot him a glare. What was that? Mandy asked. Dion shrugged. Just wondering why folks like playing savior in neighborhoods they never grew up in. Dion? Gertie warned. No, let him speak, Mandy said calmly. Dion leaned forward. You show up in a Benz, wear shoes that cost more than most people's rent, and now you want to be a hero. I didn't come to save anyone, Mandy replied, tone firm but respectful. I came because I care, because I love your sister. The word hung in the air. Her aunt let out a scoff from the kitchen. Gertie's father placed his fork down. Love's a big word. I don't use it lightly. Her mother finally spoke. Gertie, baby. Are you sure? Mama, I'm just asking. Don't let ambition blind you. Gertie's voice tightened. This has nothing to do with ambition. You've always wanted more, her mother said. And I never faulted you for that. But don't confuse being chosen with being valued. That's not fair, Gertie snapped. No, what's not fair is seeing you build something with a man who doesn't know the weight you carry. Mandy stayed silent, listening. Her father finally said, Let me ask you something, doctor. Mandy met his eyes. What are you doing with my daughter? Loving her, Mandy said. The best way I know how, and learning every day to do it better. That caught the room off guard. Gertie squeezed his hand under the table. Her aunt broke the silence. A man like you can afford anyone. Why her? Mandy answered without hesitation. Because she's not impressed by wealth. Because she calls me out. Because she challenges me to be better. Because she sees people, really sees them, and she refuses to turn away. Dion scoffed again. Sounds rehearsed. Nothing I just said was rehearsed, Mandy replied. And if you knew her the way I do, you'd understand that being loved by her is the rarest thing a man can experience. Gertie blinked hard, lips pressed tight. Her father looked at his plate. You talk good. What'd I say? Another long silence. Then her aunt stood. I'm done. She walked out. In the kitchen, Gertie stood alone, hands shaking as she poured water into a pitcher. Her mother entered behind her. "I know you think I'm being harsh. I think you're being small." Her mother flinched. "That's not fair. What's not fair is watching you turn cold the second I bring someone good home." "I'm scared, baby," she said quietly. "You've built something strong. Don't let it crumble because you wanted a seat at a table that wasn't set for you." Gertie turned. "He's not the one trying to shrink me." Her mother's eyes softened. "Then make sure he doesn't start." They left early. Outside, Mandy opened her car door for her again. She paused before getting in. "Sorry," she said. He shook his head. "Don't apologize. That's your family. I didn't want it to go like that. I didn't expect it to go any other way." She let out a breath. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure about you." They drove in silence for a while, Atlanta lights flickering across the dashboard. Finally, he said, "We'll give them time." Gertie looked out the window, voice low. Time gave them silence. Mandy reached for her hand. "Then we'll make noise." The next day, Gertie didn't bring it up. She packed her lunch for work like usual, made her strong black coffee, and kissed Mandy's cheek at the door. He didn't press her. She appreciated that. The ride to the clinic was quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't about anger. It was preservation. Like speaking too soon would break something still settling inside her. At work, she dove into intake interviews, insurance calls, and a stack of forms that looked like a never-ending tower of bureaucracy. She didn't answer her mother's texts. She ignored her brother's missed call. Her aunt hadn't reached out. Neither had her father. Mandy's family, meanwhile, sent a group chat text with photos from their Sunday brunch, Diane adding, "Next time, bring Gertie. Aria wants fashion advice." That contrast stung more than she wanted to admit. That evening, Mandy made oxtail stew. Not from scratch. He used a recipe his mother gave him, but the effort mattered. He even remembered the cornbread. She sat across from him at the table, still wearing her scrubs, hair pinned up with a pencil. He didn't say anything at first, just served her plate, poured water, and let the moment breathe. Finally, she spoke. "My mother said I've always wanted more." Mandy met her eyes. She made it sound like a flaw. He shook his head. "It's not. They think you're a risk. Then they're paying attention." Gertie smirked, barely. "That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. It's just honest." She scooped a bite of rice, chewed slowly. "What if they never come around?" "Then they don't," he said simply. "But I'm not going anywhere. I want them to love you." He reached across the table, took her hand. "They don't need to love me, Gertie. They need to respect that you do." That hit her square in the chest. She squeezed his hand. "You're good at this. I've had practice not running when things get uncomfortable." She exhaled, long and quiet. "That's new for me." He smiled. "Get used to it." Weeks passed. Her family didn't call. No invites, no apologies, just absence. And Gertie chose not to chase. Instead, she built her own peace, slowly, stubbornly. She threw herself into work, community initiatives, and occasional late-night takeout with Mandy on the couch. They didn't talk about the silence often, but it was there, in the small pauses, in the messages that didn't come, in the holidays that passed without a knock at the door. But still, Gertie woke every morning to the man who kissed her knuckles before she left for work, who folded her laundry without being asked, who showed up to every clinic board meeting not because she needed him there, but because he wanted to be. The silence didn't erase the pain, but it didn't define her joy either. One Saturday, after they painted the spare bedroom together, Mandy stood at the threshold, holding a brush in one hand, streaks of yellow paint on his forearm. "You ever think about what's next?" he asked. She looked up from the open window where she was airing the room. "Next? After this, after us, together, where it's all going." She leaned against the wall. "You mean marriage? I mean life." Gertie thought for a long moment, then said, "I want a life where I don't have to ask for space to be myself, where I'm not constantly proving I belong." He nodded. "That's the life I want to build with you." She walked to him slowly, brushing her fingers across the streaks of paint on his skin. "Then let's build it." They kissed in the middle of the paint fumes, sunlight streaming in through the window. No rings yet, no promises drawn in ceremony, but something sacred had already begun. They didn't need noise. They had clarity, and in this silence, chosen, not forced, Gertie found something her family couldn't take from her. Her own voice. The bedroom was silent, except for the low hum of the ceiling fan slicing through the thick summer air. Gertie lay curled into Mandy's chest, her leg draped over his, the cotton sheet tangled between them. She hadn't meant to fall asleep mid-conversation, but her day had been long and his skin was warm. She dozed off mid-sentence. Now, it was past 3 a.m., and she stirred to the feel of his fingertips tracing the curve of her spine. "You awake?" he whispered. She nodded, eyes still closed. "I've been thinking about something," he said. She yawned lightly. "That sounds dangerous." "I'm serious." Gertie blinked and looked up at him. His expression was unreadable, still, calm, like he had rehearsed whatever he was about to say. Then he reached under the pillow. She sat up slightly, brows pulling together. "Mandy, what?" He pulled out a small black box. No ribbon, no flourish, just velvet in his palm. Her breath caught. "I didn't want to do this at a restaurant," he said softly. "Didn't want some cheesy moment on a beach or in front of a crowd." The box opened. Inside, a platinum band with a raw emerald set in the center. Unpolished, slightly asymmetrical, but breathtaking in its honesty. "I don't want a moment, Gertie," he said. "I want a life." She stared at him, heart thudding. "I want mornings with you pacing the kitchen, ranting about broken funding promises. I want nights where we fall asleep on the couch halfway through a documentary you insisted we watch. I want quiet. I want fire. I want this," he whispered, cupping her jaw with his free hand. "Every damn day." Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. She swallowed. "I still don't have my father's blessing." "Then let me bless you with mine," he said, sliding the ring onto her finger. The fit was perfect. "I love you, Gertie, and I don't care who refuses to clap for us. I'll be the applause." She pressed her forehead to his, overwhelmed. "I'm scared." "So am I," he whispered. "But I still want forever." She nodded, voice barely audible. "Then yes." The box dropped to the floor, forgotten. And the next kiss wasn't tender. It was full of hunger, relief, and promise. They didn't bother with slow. She pulled him down, her body already buzzing. His lips met hers with urgency, their mouths crashing together as his hands roamed, greedy and sure. She moaned against him, fingers clawing at his shoulders. He flipped her onto her stomach, pulling her hips up in one swift motion. She gasped as he pushed inside from behind, one hand gripping her waist, the other sliding up her back. The sound of skin against skin echoed through the room. "Mandy," she panted. He slowed his pace, teasing now, pulling almost all the way out before driving back in, deeper each time. She gritted her teeth, fingers digging into the mattress. "Don't you dare stop." He grinned behind her, not planning to. Then he pulled her up, pressing her back against his chest, one hand wrapping around her throat, not tight, just firm, his breath hot at her ear. "You're mine now," he growled. "Say it." Her head dropped back onto his shoulder. "I'm yours." Louder. "I'm yours, Mandy." He spun her around, pushing her back against the pillows. "Ride me." She didn't hesitate. She climbed on top, sliding down with a moan, her hands planted on his chest for balance. Their eyes locked. Gertie rolled her hips slowly, then faster, her breath stuttering as he filled her again and again. Her moans grew louder. His groans deepened. Her hands found his, fingers locking. They moved together, grinding, thrusting, chasing the peak. When it came, it hit them both hard. She cried out his name. He cursed softly, his grip tightening as he released inside her. Then, silence. Only breath. Only sweat. Only the ring glinting faintly on her finger as her hands rested on his chest. Later, wrapped in sheets, she rested her head against him again. "You sure you don't want a big moment?" she asked. He kissed her forehead. "That was a big moment." She chuckled sleepily. He pulled her closer. "This is where it begins." Morning sun poured into the bedroom, but neither of them moved. Mandy was still wrapped around her, one leg thrown over hers, arm resting at her waist like a seal. Gertie blinked slowly, the weight of the ring on her finger somehow heavier than it looked, but not in a bad way. It didn't feel like decoration. It felt like truth. She turned slightly, brushing her fingers against his jawline. He was already awake, eyes soft as he watched her. "You didn't sleep," she murmured. "I did," he said, "but I kept waking up just to make sure this wasn't a dream." She smirked. "Then you're corny." You said yes. I did. He kissed her knuckles. That's all I need. She exhaled, brushing her nose against his. Then show me. He didn't ask her to clarify. He slid beneath the covers, disappearing into the warmth of her skin. This time, there was no rush, no hunger, just deliberate worship. He kissed the inside of her wrists, the curve of her inner thigh, the line where her hip met her stomach. He didn't grip. He didn't demand. He offered. When his tongue met her again, it wasn't for conquest. It was communion. Her body trembled, but her eyes stayed on him. She wanted to see it. The way his brows furrowed as he focused. The way his shoulders tensed as he moved with rhythm and patience. The way he didn't stop until she whispered his name like a secret too holy for anyone else. When he rose, she reached for him. Come here. He entered her slowly, the stretch familiar now, but still enough to draw a gasp. They didn't move at first, just held each other. His face hovered above hers, their foreheads brushing. He thrust deep, steady. Her hands wrapped around his back, fingers tracing the line of his spine. You're shaking, he whispered. I know. He kissed her neck. What do you need? Don't stop. He didn't. He moved like a man unbothered by time, each motion filled with intention. His hands cupped her face, his lips pressing softly to her jaw, her throat, her mouth. She whispered his name again, and he picked up speed. Deeper, harder, but never losing control. When she was close, her legs wrapped tight around his waist, and her breath came in shallow pants. I've got you, he said. He flipped them, pulling her on top. She gasped at the change, the sudden shift in depth and angle. Her hands braced against his chest as she rode him, hips rolling, his hands guiding her. The pleasure built again, layered and thick. She felt his eyes on her, watching, admiring, loving. Say it, he breathed. Her chest heaved. Say it, Gertie. I'm yours. He sat up, mouth at her neck, one hand around the back of her head. Again, I'm yours, Mandy. They moved together until everything else disappeared, until her moans filled the room, until his groans broke through the still air, until they fell apart in each other's arms, shaking, breathless, undone. Sweat clung to their skin. The sheets were twisted beneath them, but Gertie didn't care. Neither did he. I've never felt like this, she said. Like what? Like I don't have to hold anything back. Mandy kissed her shoulder. That's the only way. I want you. They lay together in silence, their bodies tangled, hearts still pounding. The ring sparkled in the morning light. No witnesses, no applause. Just the two of them, making love like it was the vow itself. They didn't leave the bedroom for hours. No alarms, no meetings, no expectations. Just air, skin, and quiet. Gertie lay draped across Mandy's chest, her fingertips tracing small circles over his stomach. Every few minutes, he kissed the top of her head like he didn't know how to stop. The engagement ring felt like an extension of her hand now, no longer foreign, like it had always belonged there. She spoke first. You know this doesn't mean everything gets easier. He nodded. I don't want easy. She tilted her head, eyes studying his face. You know what it means though, right? Being with me. Yeah. It means I have to be strong, patient, protective without controlling, supportive without overshadowing. He kissed her hand. And it means I'll spend the rest of my life reminding you how much you deserve to be loved, without conditions. She swallowed hard, blinked up at the ceiling, and sighed. If I ever lose myself, if the pressure gets too loud, too much, he interrupted gently. Then I'll be your quiet. That made her chest tighten. No one had ever offered her that before. He rolled her gently onto her back, hovering over her again. Let me say it the way I know how, he murmured. Gertie smiled. Again? Mandy kissed her softly. Again. Their rhythm this time was different, slower. He kissed her lips with restraint, as if tasting his own promise. Then her jaw, her neck, her collarbone, each kiss a statement, a declaration. Her legs parted for him without needing to be asked. He settled between them, teasing her center with gentle strokes, working her open again. She whimpered softly, hands tangled in his hair. I want to take my time, he whispered. No rush, no finish line. I'm not going anywhere, she breathed. He kissed down her stomach, then paused, watching her. When their eyes met, she saw it in him. The love, the reverence, the depth. He lowered himself again. Tongue slow, pressure steady. She arched immediately, thighs trembling. But he didn't speed up. He controlled every motion with intention, using his hands to spread, her wider tongue moving like it had memorized every inch of her. She came apart once, quietly, then again, louder, trembling in his grip. When he finally rose and slid into her, they both gasped at the depth. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him close. He moved slowly, hips grinding with purpose, not just thrusting but feeling. She whispered in his ear, "You fit like you were made for me." "I was," he answered. Gertie clutched him tighter as the pace increased, gradually, like a song building its chorus. Their moans tangled together. "I need to hear it," he said, voice rough. "Tell me." She kissed his temple, chest heaving. "You already know. Say it." She didn't hesitate this time. "I am yours." Again. "I'm yours, Mandy." He slammed into her deeper. Her legs locked around him. He growled in her ear. "All of you." She cried out, coming undone again, walls tightening around him, taking him over the edge with her. They clung to each other as they fell, breathless and sweaty, skin slick from effort and emotion. When it was over, he didn't move away. He stayed inside her, forehead pressed to hers, arms cradling her body like a sacred thing. "I want a small wedding," she whispered. His chest vibrated with a soft laugh. "Whatever you want. No big performance, just us. A few people who matter. I'm already the luckiest man alive." They stayed like that, wrapped in their own heat, basking in what they had built. There was no need for applause. This wasn't about spectacle. This was about truth, about claiming each other without hesitation. And in that stillness, Gertie knew she hadn't just said yes to a man. She'd said yes to a life where she didn't have to shrink, where her flame wouldn't be feared, where love didn't mean surrendering her power. She was still her, still fierce, still fire, and finally, she was his. Fully. Gertie never dreamed about wedding dresses, not as a little girl, not even as a teenager. She dreamed about scholarships, city budgets, and walking into meetings where people finally listened. But now she stood barefoot in front of a full-length mirror in a boutique, run by a Nigerian-American designer in Inman Park, watching herself, be pinned into a satin gown with an open back and delicate gold embroidery, trailing down the hem like branches reaching for something. Diane stood behind her, arms crossed, approving but not gushy. "I always knew you'd wear something powerful," she said. "It's a lot of skin. You have nothing to hide." Gertie turned slowly, the dress hugging every curve. Her locks were pulled back in a loose updo. Her collarbone shimmered from body oil. She looked radiant, but her eyes faltered. "I left 4 chairs empty," she whispered. Diane met her gaze in the mirror. "They'll fill themselves when they're ready. And if they never do, then they miss the most important moment of your life. And you still walk forward." Gertie nodded, tried to believe it. The venue was a restored mansion in Buckhead once owned by a black jazz pianist, now turned into a cultural center. It had character, history, roots, just like she wanted. No ballrooms, no chandeliers, just carved wood, aged brick, and a backyard lit with string lights. Mandy handled the food, jollof rice and cornbread, whiskey-glazed chicken and fried okra, a fusion menu where both families could find something to eat and argue over whose version was better. He wore a cream tuxedo, collar slightly undone, no bow tie. She hadn't seen him all day. They agreed to meet at the altar, no first look. She stood behind the garden doors now, veil in hand, heart racing. No bouquet, no train, no dramatic music, just the hush of breath before something begins. She peeked through the doors. 4 front-row chairs sat empty. Her mother's, her father's, her brother's, her aunt's. The sight bruised her. But before she could falter, a warm hand slipped into hers. "Diane, I'll walk you," she said simply. Gertie blinked, overcome. "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to." Together, they stepped into the aisle. The guests stood. A breeze moved through the garden, lifting the edge of Gertie's dress just slightly, like the wind itself wanted to witness. Mandy turned. His eyes locked on hers and glistened. He didn't cry, but he looked like he'd been hit in the chest with something that knocked the air out of him. She kept her chin high, each step steady. The crowd blurred. All she saw was him. At the altar, Diane kissed her cheek and stepped back. Mandy took Gertie's hands. "You look like truth," he whispered. "And you look nervous," she teased. "I am, because I don't want to mess this up." "Then don't." They exchanged vows without a microphone. No script, just voice. Mandy's voice cracked as he said, "I fell in love with you watching you fight, not because I thought you needed saving, but because you didn't. You worked yourself to the bone to make this world better, and still, you let me in." He looked down briefly, then up again. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met. You are fire, and I promise to never dim you, only fuel you." Gertie swallowed hard. Then she spoke. "I didn't trust you at first. I thought your world would crush mine, that I'd have to bend to fit into something smaller than what I'd built. But instead, you made room." Her eyes welled. "I'm still me, still loud, still stubborn, but now I'm seen, and I'm safe." They didn't wait for permission. They kissed. Slow, certain, not a show. Just real. That night, they danced barefoot under hanging lights in the backyard. Diane toasted with champagne in one hand and a baby photo of Mandy in the other. People laughed, cried, and passed around bowls of egusi and shrimp and grits. No DJ, just a curated playlist and laughter echoing off old brick walls. At one point, Gertie caught her reflection in the window, glowing, barefoot, married. She didn't look like a woman who'd settled. She looked like a woman who had arrived. The vows were over, the kiss done. The applause had faded, but the ceremony had only just begun. Not the part with chairs and programs, not the staged part. This was the real one, where love had to prove it could live past the linen and into life. Mandy pulled Gertie aside after the final toast, weaving through a sea of well-wishers and cousins twice removed. "Come with me," he whispered, tugging her gently by the hand. They ducked away into a hallway inside the mansion, cooler, dimmer, quieter. The noise of laughter and Nina Simone's voice in the speakers faded behind them. Gertie leaned against the wall, the train of her dress already tucked. Under her arm, curls escaping from the pins holding them in place. "You okay?" he asked. "I haven't exhaled in 4 hours." He smiled. "Then breathe." She did. Finally, "I didn't think I'd cry," she said. "You didn't. Not until the vows. You weren't supposed to notice." "I noticed everything." His thumb brushed under her eye. "You still want to run?" he asked gently. She shook her head. Not even a little. Later that night, in the room they'd booked at a boutique hotel downtown, Gertie stepped. Out of the bathroom, wearing nothing but the engagement ring and confidence. Mandy stood at the foot of the bed, shirtless, glass of water forgotten in his hand. "You're staring," she said. "I've been staring since the day I met you." She walked toward him slowly, hips moving like a challenge. When she reached him, she took the glass from his hand and set it aside. "I thought weddings were supposed to exhaust people." He grinned. "You still have energy?" She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Enough for you." He kissed her like he'd been waiting all night, which he had. Their mouths moved together, hungry but not rushed, hands exploring familiar ground, but this time with something heavier between them. Commitment. Legacy. Mandy slid the straps of her gown down one shoulder, then the other. The fabric fell to the floor, pooling around her feet like silk water. He lifted her easily, carrying her to the bed. No teasing this time. No long build-up. He entered her slowly, both of them gasping at the contact. Deep, full, electric. They moved together in silence. Their rhythm steady. Their connection wordless. His hands held her hips like they were a map he'd memorized. She pulled him closer, wrapped her legs around his back, whispered his name in his ear like a hymn. He groaned low, thrusting deeper, harder, but still careful, still mindful. Because this wasn't just lust anymore. This was love with memory. Love that had gone through the fire and come out whole. They climaxed together, slow, shaking, and fully present. Afterward, she lay on his chest, fingers drawing invisible circles on his skin. That was... He nodded. Yeah, no wedding speeches could have topped that. Agreed. They stayed quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Do you think they'll come around?" Mandy stroked her back. "If they don't, we'll still be here. And if they do, then they'll be coming home to something we already built." She looked up at him. "You really mean that?" I married you, didn't I?" Her smile broke slowly across her face. Soft, steady, safe. They drifted off like that. No fanfare. Just two people, tangled in sweat and sheets, making good on promises without a stage. The reception lingered well into the night, long after the last slice of cake had been served and the last toast made. The garden was lit only by string lights, flickering candles, and the soft glow of joy that floated between the tables. Gertie stood barefoot in the grass, holding a glass of chilled hibiscus tea, her train bundled in one hand. The DJ had left hours ago, but someone had hooked a phone to the speakers, and Nina Simone's voice still haunted the space with feeling good. She didn't look for Mandy. She knew exactly where he was. And when he slipped up behind her, arms sliding around her waist, she leaned into him without hesitation. "Still awake?" he whispered into her ear. "Barely. Want to leave?" "No," she said, sipping her drink. "Not yet." Around them, their chosen people lingered in small clusters, activists with tired feet and full hearts, surgeons, trading political jokes with poets, neighbors from South Atlanta sharing plates with professors from Emory. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a collision of worlds, and it worked, against every warning, despite every fear. She turned to face him, eyes a little glassy from the wine and the weight of everything they'd survived. "Do you remember the first thing I said to you?" she asked. "You said you were the engine." "Still am. And I said hearts were important too." "You were wrong." He raised an eyebrow. "Was I?" She reached for his hand and placed it on her chest. "This hasn't stopped since I met you. Not once. Not even when I wanted to walk away." He pulled her closer. "That's because it's not just your engine anymore." Their lips met again. Not desperate, not eager, just connected, present. They danced alone in the middle of the lawn as the guests faded into their own conversations. Gertie rested her head against his chest while they swayed. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" "For walking into a space you didn't belong in and not making it about you." "I didn't walk into it," he said. "I was invited. You know what I mean?" "I do. And I meant it, every part of it." She looked up at him. "What part?" "That I want the fire. Not just the warmth. The whole damn blaze." She laughed softly, blinking away a few happy tears. "Then you better keep feeding it." He kissed her gently. Every day. Inside, Diane sat at a small table with a plate of wedding favors and a bottle of Prosecco. She was laughing at something Arya said when Gertie's father walked in. Everything stopped. He hadn't RSVP'd, hadn't returned calls, hadn't said a word since that dinner months ago. Now he stood in the doorway in a clean dress shirt, holding a tray of ribs. Diane rose slowly. "You're late," she said. "I'm just in time," he replied. She gave him a long look. "You cooking?" He nodded. "She always loved my ribs." Arya reached for a napkin and wiped at her eyes. This just got interesting. Out on the dance floor, Gertie saw the door open. Her body went still. Mandy turned to follow her gaze. There he was, her father. He walked toward her slowly, ribs in one hand, pride tucked deep in his back pocket. No words, just presence. "I came late," he said. "But I came—" Gertie blinked at him, lips parting. He looked at Mandy. "You still love her?" "With everything I've got." Her father gave one short nod. "Then come eat." I made ribs. That night, long after the last table was cleared and the music faded, Gertie sat on the edge of the bed, heels tossed aside, dress half unzipped. Mandy knelt before her, fingers gently working the straps loose, helping her step out of the last piece of satin. "You good?" he asked. "I think my life just changed." He looked up at her. It already had. This was just the celebration. She laughed. "You always know what to say." "No, I just know what you need to hear." She kissed him, deeply, deliberately, then pulled him to the bed, their laughter trailing into something deeper. Their lovemaking that night wasn't about claiming, or declaring, or even proving. It was about remembering how far they had come, how hard they had fought, and how right this felt, against all odds. It started with silence, the kind of silence that wrapped around Gertie when she realized her body was off rhythm. 3 days, then 5, then 10. She wasn't worried at first. She'd been stressed, eating at odd hours, working long shifts again. But then came the dizziness, the smell of shrimp making her gag, the heavy exhaustion that pressed behind her eyes by noon. And the test, positive in seconds. She sat on the closed toilet seat, blinking at the 2 lines, her heartbeat thumping in her ears. She didn't scream, didn't smile, just stared. Mandy found her later that evening, curled up on the couch, still in her work scrubs, the test on the coffee table, like it was watching them both. He picked it up, looked at it, then looked at her. "You're sure?" She nodded, unable to speak. For a long time, he said nothing, just stared at the test like it had rewritten his future. Then he dropped to his knees in front of her and kissed her stomach. "Twice. I love you," he said, "and I love whoever this is already." Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "You're not mad?" He laughed, a sound full of disbelief. "Mad, Gertie. I've wanted this longer than I've let myself admit." He looked up at her, eyes soft. "We're going to be parents." And just like that, she believed it. They painted the nursery together on a Sunday afternoon. Yellow walls, a shelf of baby books, a rocking chair Diane found at a vintage market and personally reupholstered. Mandy researched cribs like he was designing for NASA. Gertie started reading parenting books on her lunch break, bookmarking every chapter about identity, community, and care. At night, he kissed her stomach before sleep. Every morning he whispered, "Good morning, little one," before Gertie could even roll over. They had names picked out before the 2nd trimester. The baby moved early, flutters that made her gasp, then giggle. Mandy started playing classical music through headphones on her belly. They argued about swaddles, laughed about diaper brands, and debated which side of the family would be worse about unsolicited advice. Everything felt fragile, but whole. Then it happened. A sharp pain. In the middle of the night. Blood. Too much of it. Mandy didn't ask questions. He wrapped her in a blanket, lifted her into the car, and drove like the world was on fire. At the hospital, time stopped. White coats moved in blurs. Machines beeped. Nurses whispered. And then the doctor said, "We're so sorry." The sheets were white, stained red, her body still, her arms empty, her world quiet. Mandy sat beside her, silent. His hand held hers, but he didn't speak. Neither did she, because there were no words, only grief, and the sound of something inside her breaking. The days that followed blurred. Mandy brought her home from the hospital in silence. No nursery talk, no soft music, no list of baby names on the fridge, just a cold space where something sacred had been forming and vanished. Gertie didn't cry at first. She sat in the living room in one of Mandy's sweatshirts, her feet tucked under her, staring at the wall for hours. The TV was on, but she never followed the sound. Her hands never moved, not even to touch the loose ring Mandy had placed on her nightstand while she slept. The room felt too clean, too intact, as if the universe had left everything in place, except her. Mandy tried to fill the space with small things. Tea, silence, the occasional brush of his hand along her back, but she didn't respond. She moved like a guest in her own home, showering, eating, folding clothes, all by routine, not choice. He'd hear her moving around in the kitchen at 2 a.m., then find the lights off by morning, the fridge door open, the trash half full, the bathroom door closed. One night, he woke to the sound of something crashing. He found her on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, forehead pressed to the tile. "I'm not whole," she whispered. He dropped beside her, gathering her in his arms. "You're not broken." "I am," she choked. "I failed." He shook his head slowly. You don't know what it felt like, knowing something was living inside me, and then gone. I know what it felt like holding your hand when they said the word miscarriage. I know what it felt like watching you disappear after." She looked up at him, eyes raw. "I can't give you what you want. I didn't fall in love with your womb, Gertie." She flinched. "I fell in love with you." That night, for the first time in weeks, she let him carry her to bed. They didn't speak. He peeled the sweatshirt off her body slowly, gently. She stood in silence, arms limp, tears spilling without sound. He laid her down like something sacred, and then he climbed in beside her, his hand on her hip, his lips against her shoulder. She let herself turn into him. And then, without knowing why, she reached down and guided him inside her. No words, no rhythm, just motion. Her breath hitched. His chest trembled. There was no heat in it, just grief. Just need a silent apology from her body to his, a desperate whisper from his soul to hers. He moved slowly, tenderly, their foreheads pressed together. She came quietly, like an exhale. He followed, broken and breathless. Afterward, she didn't pull away. And when she finally spoke, it was only one word: thank you. They lay in the dark, limbs tangled, tears drying on skin. And for the first time since the loss, she didn't feel alone, not healed, but held. Gertie didn't return to work for another month. She told them she needed time. And to her surprise, no one pushed back. Her staff sent flowers. The board approved her leave. The volunteers held things down without question. But healing wasn't a straight line. It came in pieces. One morning, she stayed in bed until noon and sobbed into Mandy's shirt. The next day, she made pancakes and danced to Old School Soul in the kitchen, then cried again when she passed the closed nursery door. Mandy never tried to predict her. He met her in every version. On the hard days, he sat beside her in silence. On the better ones, he reminded her how much light she still carried, even when she didn't feel it. One night, a thunderstorm rolled through the city, the kind that rattled windows and soaked the air. Gertie stood by the window, her arms folded, watching the rain run down the glass like veins. Mandy walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "I miss them," she whispered. "Me too. I didn't even know them," she added. "But I miss everything they could have been." His hand slid up to her heart. "And they still live in everything you are." She turned to face him. "Do you ever wonder if this shifted us?" "Of course it did." "Shifted or broke?" "Shifted," he said, without hesitation. "Broke means it ends. Shifted means we bend." She let out a shaky breath. "I don't feel strong. You don't have to be. I'm tired of being empty." "You're not," he said, guiding her hands to his chest. "Not here." They made love again that night, slow, deliberate, nothing flashy. His lips traced her collarbone. Her fingers tangled in his curls. She didn't cry this time. She clung. She moved against him not to escape but to feel connected, to feel wanted, not pitied. He thrust slow, deep, his body echoing her rhythm. When she came, it wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet, centered, a sigh of release that pulsed through her like a tide. Afterward, he pulled her close, pressing kisses along her back. "I still want forever with you," he murmured. She closed her eyes and believed him. Weeks passed. The grief didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It stopped choking her. It became something she could carry without collapsing. The nursery remained untouched for now. They didn't rush. Instead, they focused on each other. Mandy returned to work. Gertie eased back into the clinic, one file at a time. And every night, without fail, he held her. Not to fix her, not to distract her, just to be there. Because that's what love looked like now. Not grand, not loud, just enduring. It came on a Tuesday, an envelope without a return address. Just her name handwritten in a script she hadn't seen in over a year. Gertie stared at it on the kitchen counter like it might explode. Mandy noticed the shift in her posture before he even saw what she was looking at. "What's that?" She didn't answer, just kept staring. He walked over, drying his hands on a towel. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "It's from her." He didn't have to ask who. She peeled the envelope open like it might cut her. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No formal greeting, no signature, just one sentence. "You look happy on TV. I hope you're still my daughter." Mom, her breath left her chest in a slow, aching stream. Mandy stepped closer. What did she say? Gertie handed him the paper. He read it once, then again, then placed it down without speaking. Gertie sat at the table, hands in her lap, staring into nothing. "I don't know what to do with that," she whispered. "You don't have to do anything," Mandy said gently. "Not until you're ready." "I thought I made peace with the silence," she said. "You did? Then why does this make it hurt again?" "Because it's not silence anymore. It's noise pretending to be soft." She looked at him, eyes welling. "I want to believe she means it." "You can," he said, "but you don't have to carry it alone." That night, Gertie sat with the letter in her lap for nearly an hour before she picked up her phone. She didn't call. She texted, "Can we talk?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished. She waited. 2 hours later, a reply came. If you're ready, come home. She showed Mandy the message the next morning. He didn't hesitate. I'll drive you. You have surgery this week. They can cover. I can go alone. I don't want you to. Her voice cracked. What if they pretend nothing happened? Then you speak your truth anyway. She touched his face. You're too good. No, he said. I'm just yours. They drove in silence. Back to Bankhead. The neighborhood hadn't changed. Same cracked sidewalks. Same corner stores. Same folding chairs on the porch. But the house felt smaller than she remembered. Her father answered the door. His hair was grayer. His stance softer. He didn't say anything. Just pulled her into a long, wordless hug. Mandy waited at the car, watching. After a moment, her father walked over to him. You still love her? He asked. Mandy nodded. With everything. Her father exhaled. Then come eat, he said. I made ribs. The ribs were already on the stove when they stepped inside. The smell alone hit Gertie like a memory she hadn't asked for. Smoky, tangy, laced with nostalgia and tension. Her father disappeared into the kitchen, as if the act of cooking was his way of saying everything he didn't know how to speak aloud. Gertie stood in the foyer, the same scuffed hardwood beneath her feet. The same crooked family portrait still hanging above the coat rack. Nothing had changed, except her. Her mother appeared at the hallway's end. Older, thinner, the same eyes, neither moved. Then, slowly, her mother stepped forward. I didn't know if you'd come, she said. I almost didn't. Her mother nodded. That's fair. They stood only a foot apart now. The air between them felt charged, tight, uncertain. I watched your wedding, her mother said. Someone recorded it on a phone. Sent it to me. You could have come. I didn't know how. You just show up, Gertie said, like you always told me to do when things got hard. Her mother's lip trembled. I failed you. Yes, Gertie said simply. But I'm here. That was enough. They hugged, not tight, not long, but long enough to mean something. Mandy sat in the living room, politely accepting a paper plate loaded with ribs, collard greens, and cornbread. Dion, her brother, slouched in the armchair across from him, picking at his food like it had personally offended him. You still rich? Dion asked, not looking up. I do okay, Mandy replied. You ever gonna move her out of South Atlanta? If she wants to leave, we'll leave. If she wants to stay, we stay. Dion finally looked at him. You let her make the calls? I don't let her. She doesn't need permission. That earned the faintest smirk. You all right? Dion muttered. I try. The dinner table wasn't perfect. Her aunt didn't come. The conversation had its pauses. Her father didn't make eye contact often, but it was happening. A family, trying. A woman, showing up. A wound, not healed, but no longer ignored. Gertie passed around napkins, refilled cups, laughed once at a joke that caught her off guard. She caught Mandy watching her and smiled across the table. Not a forced smile, a real one. After dinner, her mother helped her gather plates. You look like you, she said quietly. Was I supposed to look like someone else? I thought marriage would change you. It did, Gertie said, but not the way you feared. Her mother nodded, then placed a clean dish on the rack. You're stronger now. No, Gertie replied. I just finally stopped apologizing for the strength I already had. As they left, her father walked them to the door. He didn't say goodbye, just placed a warm to-go container in her hands. Extra ribs, he said. Thank you. Then he looked at Mandy. Take care of her. I always do. Her father's gaze lingered a second longer than necessary. Then he nodded and stepped back inside. The door closed softly. Gertie stood on the porch, looking at it. Mandy took her hand. You okay? She nodded. I think we're finally getting there. They drove home with the windows down, the city lights flickering around them. In the passenger seat, Gertie opened the container and smiled. Still the best ribs in the city? Mandy grinned. You gonna share? Not a chance. They laughed, and for the first time in a long time, Gertie felt light. Not empty, not waiting, just light. The following Sunday, Mandy made oxtail and garlic rice from scratch. Not because he loved cooking, but because he knew Gertie's spirit was still fragile. And food, in their home had always been more than survival. It was a way to say, I see you, I care, I'm staying. She leaned against the counter, barefoot in one of his shirts, sipping lemonade and watching him stir the pot like a surgeon. You really doing the most, she teased. He glanced back with a smirk. Only for the woman who makes grief look like growth. She smiled faintly and walked over to press a kiss to his neck. You trying to get me to marry you again? She murmured. He looked her in the eye. Every day. They sat down to eat just after 3. The table was modest. 2 plates. Candles. No music. But it felt full. Like warmth lived in the quiet between them. Gertie spooned a bit of rice, took a bite, and let her eyes flutter shut. You outdid yourself, Doc. He grinned. I know. They laughed. Not politely, not cautiously, like people who had been through a war and made it home, bloodied but breathing. Halfway through the meal, Gertie put her fork down and reached for his hand. You've held me through every version of myself, she said. Even the ones I didn't like. You were never hard to love, Mandy replied. She studied him. That's a lie. He chuckled. Okay, maybe a little hard. But still worth it. She leaned across the table and kissed him, slow, deliberate. Let's make a new start, she whispered. This is it, he said, lacing their fingers. Right here, right now. Later that evening, Gertie got a call from her father. It was brief. He didn't ramble, just said, Your mama's cooking next Sunday. Bring him. Bring yourself. No questions. She hung up and smiled to herself. What was that? Mandy asked from the living room. She walked in, sank beside him on the couch, and laid her head on his chest. We've been invited back. By your dad? She nodded. He's softening, she whispered. Or maybe you're softening enough to see him clearer. She looked up at him. Maybe both. That Sunday, they returned, not just as guests, but as something steadier. Her mother had made fried catfish and sweet potatoes. The dining table had extra chairs pulled up. Dion showed up late, but brought his girlfriend. Gertie helped with dishes. Mandy fixed the broken cabinet door. There was no official apology, no grand gesture, just family, choosing, slowly, to come back to each other, choosing to share a table, to speak, to chew, to laugh, to listen. After dessert, Gertie slipped out onto the porch with a glass of sweet tea. Her mother joined her after a moment. You built something beautiful, her mother said. I didn't do it alone. Her mother nodded. You made a home, she continued. Even when we didn't give you one. Gertie's throat tightened. I needed you to love me as I was, she said. I didn't know how. You still don't. But you're trying. And I see it. Her mother placed a hand over hers. Don't stop showing me. When Gertie and Mandy got home that night, she stepped out of her heels and walked barefoot to the mirror in their bedroom. She looked at herself, not in judgment, not in longing, in recognition. You're different, Mandy said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I'm coming back to me. He kissed her shoulder. You never left. She turned in his arms. Then she pulled him into her. No words, no lingering sadness. Just love. Raw, real, rebuilt. Hello, my wonderful and beautiful family. If you're still here with me, drop a comment saying, I am with Dr. Phillips. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It truly helps you. Tube share these stories with more amazing people like you who need them. Now, let's dive right back into the story. Gertie didn't expect it to happen that fast. One moment, she was in the backyard with Mandy, watching the grill smoke curl into the Atlanta sky, laughing at something he said about baby names. The next, her glass slipped from her hand. A sharp cramp twisted through her, deep and undeniable. Her breath caught. Her knees buckled. And Mandy was already there, catching her before she hit the ground. I'm driving, he said firmly as he loaded her into the back seat, pillows and all. Don't argue. I wasn't planning to. Gertie gritted through her teeth. But if these babies could hold on till we hit the freeway, that'd be nice. He flew through red lights like he had a badge, his hands gripping the wheel like it held his sanity. Gertie moaned as another contraction tore through her. You know what's funny? She panted. I used to be terrified of hospitals. He glanced at her. You picked a hell of a time to bring that up. Now I get to deliver twins. At your hospital. Full circle, huh? He grinned, despite the tension in his shoulders. Our baby's no drama. By the time they arrived, a team was already waiting, thanks to a call Mandy had, made while Gertie was still gripping the seatbelt and threatening to scream. They wheeled her in fast, faster than she could catch her breath. But one thing grounded her: Mandy's hand never left hers. The delivery room felt like a blur of blue scrubs and urgent commands, but Gertie never lost focus. She was about to meet the two souls who'd survived her pain, carried her joy, and reminded her every single day that life could begin again. Mandy was right beside her in full gown and gloves, eyes locked on hers, whispering, "You've got this." She gritted her teeth, dug her nails into his palm and pushed. Once, twice, and then a cry. Small, fierce, beautiful. "Baby girl," the nurse announced. Seconds later, another cry rang out, this one louder. "Baby boy," the doctor confirmed. Both healthy, both perfect. Tears streamed down Mandy's cheeks, and he didn't care who saw. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You did it." "No," Gertie whispered hoarsely. "We did it." Micah had Mandy's dimple. Zora had Gertie's mouth. Both had lungs that demanded attention and hearts that had already stolen theirs. Later that evening, their hospital room turned into a gathering ground of healing and grace. Gertie's mother arrived first, holding a soft pink and blue blanket. "I stitched these," she said shyly. Gertie didn't say a word, just took them with trembling hands and nodded. Her father came next. He held Zora like she was made of glass, mumbling something about how the baby looked just like Gertie when she came home from the hospital 30 years ago. Even Dion showed up, awkwardly holding a bag of diapers and whispering, "Y'all outnumbered now?" And then Mandy's parents walked in. His mother went straight for Micah, eyes shining, while his father pulled Mandy aside and clapped a proud hand on his shoulder. "You did good, son," his father murmured. "Couldn't have done it without her," Mandy said. His dad looked over at Gertie, now nursing Zora under a warm lamp glow, and nodded. "She's family now. Solid." Later, when the room emptied and only the four of them remained, Gertie looked at Mandy with heavy eyes. "We made this," she whispered. "We made peace and people." He cradled Micah in one arm, Zora in the other. "And we made home," he added. Outside, fireworks from a city festival cracked the sky in bursts of red and gold. Mandy turned the hospital bed so she could see. Zora stirred. Micah blinked. Gertie reached for his hand again. This time she said softly, "Let's not rush anything." He nodded. "Let's just be." And for once, that was enough. The yard behind Mandy and Gertie's home had never looked more alive. Paper lanterns floated overhead, casting soft golden light against the evening sky. Tables were wrapped in white linen, trimmed with lavender ribbon and gold-rimmed plates. Candles flickered. The scent of roasted chicken and grilled vegetables filled the air, mixing with soft laughter and the faint hum of a distant saxophone. Tonight wasn't just a naming ceremony. It was a declaration, not just for Micah and Zora, but for every wound that had been acknowledged, every wall that had been lowered, and every step towards something that looked like family. Mandy's mother stood near the makeshift altar, rocking Zora in her arms as the choir softly rehearsed under the shade of the oak tree. "She has her mama's energy," she whispered to Gertie, "and her daddy's calm." "I'll take that as a blessing," Gertie replied, adjusting her dress. Micah was in Mandy's arms, dressed in a soft cream linen set. He gurgled and clapped at nothing in particular, but Mandy beamed like he'd delivered a sermon. "Whole world in your hands," Mandy murmured to his son, brushing a kiss against his forehead. The minister, a longtime friend of Mandy's family, called the ceremony to order. Everyone gathered in a circle. No rows, no hierarchy, just presence. "Today, we recognize not just two children," she said, "but the bridge they've become, between generations, between past and present, between pain and grace." Gertie held Micah while Mandy took Zora, standing together under the sky as their names were called aloud. Micah Elias Motley, Zora Grace Motley. The words carried. They echoed. And for once, Gertie didn't flinch from being seen. After the baptism, the twins were passed gently from arm to arm. Her mother kissed Micah's cheek. Dion held Zora like he'd trained for months. Mandy's father poured everyone glasses of fruit wine and gave a toast. That had no speech, just a simple to love and a clink of glasses. The music started slowly, the first chords of Nina Simone's Feeling Good rising over the crowd. Gertie stood in the center of the yard, barefoot on the grass, Micah cradled against her. Her father approached, awkwardly. May I? She hesitated. Then she handed him her son, and he danced, rocking the child gently in his arms, swaying side to side, humming along. Mandy watched from a few feet away, Zora curled in his chest, heart in his throat. You okay? Gertie whispered, stepping beside him. He nodded. I never thought I'd see this. Neither did I. Then came the laughter, the clapping, the dancing, not staged, not forced, real. Families that once refused to make eye contact now danced in small circles, trading stories, passing around bottles of soda and banana pudding. At one point, Gertie's mother and Mandy's mother laughed so hard they had to sit down, wiping tears with their napkins. Gertie and Mandy sat at the edge of it all, the twins asleep in their arms. This feels like fiction, she said. It's not. It feels too soft. You earned it. She looked around, the lights, the music, the people she once thought she'd never stand beside again. No, she said finally. We earned it. He leaned over, kissed her temple. Let's keep earning it. That night, once the last guest had gone and the music faded, Mandy found Gertie in the nursery, watching their children sleep. She didn't speak. She just wrapped her arms around his waist. He rested his chin on her head. I used to think love meant surviving, she whispered. And now I know it means belonging. The house was silent. The twins were fast asleep in their cribs, full from the day's blessings and the lullabies Mandy had hummed just minutes before. Atlanta's skyline shimmered through the sheer curtains, casting slanted moonlight across the polished floors of their bedroom. Gertie stood by the mirror, still wrapped in the silk burgundy dress she had worn for the ceremony. The back was low, her shoulders bare. Her curls framed her face in soft waves. Her eyes were tired, but her spirit glowed. Mandy leaned against the doorframe, watching her, devouring her without haste. You ever notice, he said softly, how you look like answered prayer when you're not even trying? She turned, slowly. You always say things that make my knees weak. Then come sit, he said, nodding toward the edge of the bed. I want to hold everything that's mine. She walked to him, her movements deliberate, almost shy. She sat, and he knelt, on the floor, not to remove her heels, but to unfasten the tiny buttons running up the back of her dress, one by one. His fingers lingered at each clasp, as if memorizing her spine through touch. She gasped when the fabric slid from her shoulders. But not from cold, from reverence. You carried my children, he whispered against her collarbone. You forgave what nearly shattered you. You faced your fears. You let me love you again. You let yourself love me again. His hands roamed slowly, palms against her thighs, up her waist, over the curve of her back. He wasn't touching her like a man hungry. He was touching her like a man home. I want to take my time tonight, he murmured. Not to prove something, just to honor everything. He kissed the inside of her wrist, then her elbow, then the soft skin just above her heart. You still feel like fire, she whispered, threading her fingers into his hair. He looked up at her. And you, he said, voice low and certain, feel like destiny. He stood and lifted her without strain, laying her down as though placing something sacred on the altar. Her breath caught when his mouth found the soft line beneath her jaw, when his hands spread her thighs, patient and gentle, when he whispered her name like scripture between her legs. She trembled beneath him, not from nervousness, but from recognition. He wasn't just making love to her. He was reclaiming her scars with reverence, saying, your softness didn't ruin you. Your strength didn't scare me. Your journey led you back to me. She gasped when he entered her, slow, deep, intentional. There was no rush, no urgency, just rhythm and devotion. You're still mine, he said, voice hoarse. And you're still everything, she breathed. He kissed her lips, long and deep, before pressing his forehead to hers, their bodies locked in an unhurried dance. Every motion was full of meaning, every moan a chapter, every breath a vow. When she cried out, it wasn't from release alone. It was from being seen, from being worshipped, not just as a woman, but as a partner, as a mother, as a miracle. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, skin glistening, breath shallow. Mandy drew slow circles across her hip, his eyes never leaving her face. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. Don't let us go quiet, not even when we get tired. He nodded, kissing her fingertips. "You'll never be unheard in this house." She smiled. "Good. Because I want our children to know what love looks like, not just what it survives." And with that, they drifted into sleep. Not from exhaustion, but from fulfillment. Two souls still learning how to rest inside each other. The backyard was a patch of heaven. Late spring had dressed the garden in green, and Atlanta's breeze carried the scent of rosemary, orange blossom, and smoked meat. Paper lanterns strung from tree to tree swayed gently above, glowing like low stars. A checkered blanket stretched across the grass. There were bowls of fruit, trays of lemon bars, roasted vegetables, mason jars filled with iced hibiscus tea, and a man behind the grill who had found a new religion in seasoning, Mandy, sweating in his apron, singing Luther Vandross and flipping salmon like it was art. "Chef Daddy strikes again," Gertie teased from the porch, where she stood with Micah on her hip and Zora giggling at her feet. Mandy looked up, wiped his brow with the back of his hand, and winked. "I'm just trying to keep up with my fine wife in that sundress." Gertie laughed, spinning slowly so the hem of her yellow dress danced with the wind. "You mean this little thing?" He gave a slow nod, eyes roaming with appreciation. "That little thing just made me forget the marinade." The twins were now one. Micah was wild and fearless, already running and bumping into everything. Zora was thoughtful and observant, the calm balance to her brother's chaos. Together, they made every meal an adventure and every silence a rare gift. Today marked not just a year since their birth, but also Gertie and Mandy's second anniversary. And they chose to spend it not at a restaurant, not in a hotel, but right here, where life had rooted itself deeply and sweetly, in their backyard, with hands held and hearts open. Dion arrived with his girlfriend, who immediately claimed Zora and didn't let her go until she fell asleep in her arms. Gertie's mother brought potato salad and peach cobbler. Mandy's father brought a Bluetooth speaker and zero rhythm, but unmatched joy on the dance floor. The sound of laughter rolled over the grass like music. Stories bounced across the blanket about childhood mischief, school fights, near misses, and unlikely grace. It was family. Not perfect, but present. Gertie sat beside Mandy on the blanket, their knees touching, kids crawling between them. He passed her a grilled skewer and a cold drink. She leaned in and whispered, "This is exactly what I dreamed of. Even with the burnt corn? Especially with the burnt corn." He grinned, then reached over and tucked a piece of her hair behind her ear. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. "Every time I look at you." She nudged him with her shoulder. "Be serious." "I am. But yes, I think about it. Especially now." He gestured around them, the full plates, the tired kids, the sound of her mother laughing with his. "This was the dream we didn't even know we had," he said. "And now it's the life we're living." As the sun dipped low and dusk painted the sky with soft indigo, someone turned up the volume on the speaker. "Nina again. This time, ain't got no, I got life." Gertie stood, barefoot in the grass, and reached for Mandy's hand. He hesitated, glancing at the grill. "Leave it," she said. "The salmon can wait." He let himself be pulled, and they danced, clumsy, sweet, swaying to the rhythm of laughter and song. Micah clapped his hands. Zora smiled in her sleep, and for a moment, time paused, just long enough for Gertie to rest her head on Mandy's chest and whisper, "You gave me everything I never had the courage to ask for." He held her tighter. "Because you gave me the reason to believe I could." Later, once the guests had left and the lanterns glowed brighter against the dark, Mandy and Gertie cleaned up in silence, shoulder to shoulder, exchanging small smiles. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Love didn't always sound like declarations. Sometimes it sounded like dishes clinking, babies snoring, and feet brushing under the table. When the yard was empty and the stars took their place above, Gertie looked around, then whispered, "Let's never sell this house." "We won't," Mandy promised, "even when the twins grow. Even if we get rich. This place isn't about money. It's about roots." She kissed his cheek, then his mouth, then took his hand, and led him inside. The night was warm. Atlanta's sky held no clouds, just stars, quiet witnesses to the end of a perfect day. The backyard, once filled with laughter and music, now hummed in stillness, punctuated only by the occasional chirp of crickets. Gertie was barefoot, holding the last of the lemonade glasses, her fingers sticky with sugar. She didn't rush. She stood under the paper lanterns, looking up, bathed in soft golden light. Mandy watched her from the porch, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, heart full. He saw her the way men rarely see their wives after years, not just as the mother of his children, not as the keeper of their home, but as the woman he'd risked everything for, and would do it all over again. "Leave the glass," he said gently. She turned, eyebrows raised. "You know I hate waking up to a mess." He stepped down the porch steps and crossed the grass to her. "I'll handle it later," he said. Then, without asking, he slid his arms under her knees and behind her back, lifting her effortlessly. "Mandy." She laughed and clutched his neck. "You're not supposed to do this unless we're getting married again." "Well," he murmured, "we kinda do that every day, don't we?" He carried her slowly through the yard, up the steps and into the house, like a vow in motion. The twins were already down, their soft snores like lullabies echoing from the nursery. The lights inside were low. Their bedroom was bathed in soft candlelight, set by Mandy before dinner, as if he knew this moment would come. He placed her gently on the bed, but didn't move away. His hand lingered at her ankle, then slid up to her calf, then higher, not with urgency, but reverence. "We used to come together like fire and thunder," Gertie whispered, sitting up slightly. "Now, it's like ocean and moon." Mandy looked into her eyes. "Which one am I?" "You're both." He smiled, slow and full. "Then I'll move with your tide." He peeled off her dress, slowly, like he was peeling back years, layer by layer. Not just fabric, but memory, guilt, fear, hope. She lay back as his lips touched her skin, her stomach, the curve of her hip, the scar just under her ribs from the emergency C-section. His fingers brushed it gently. "Thank you," he whispered there. "For what?" "For everything it took to bring our babies into the world." Her voice trembled. "I didn't think I'd survive it." "But you did," he said. "And now, look at you." His body settled over hers. Warm, solid, known. Their mouths met, soft at first, tasting each other like rediscovery. There was no race, no frantic desperation, just depth, deliberate devotion. When he entered her, it wasn't with hunger. It was with soul. She gasped, not from pain or surprise, but from the feeling of being cherished in a way that shattered every leftover wall. Mandy held her face in both hands, his eyes locked to hers. "I'm not loving you for what we've been," he said, breathless. "I'm loving you for what we still get to become." Her legs wrapped around him. Her nails pressed into his back, not to scratch, but to anchor. Each movement was a conversation, each moan an answer. Every thrust was slow, intentional, like spelling out their vows again through touch. She cried, not from sorrow, but from the fullness of being seen completely. He kissed her tears, then her neck, then her shoulder, then deeper, until they moved together like water flowing back into its source. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing circles across her spine. She spoke first. "You remember the first time we did this?" In the on-call room, he chuckled. "You bit my shoulder to keep quiet. Only because you were good at what you were doing," she teased, then paused. "But it didn't feel like this." "No," he said. "That was want. This is worship." The candlelight flickered gently beside them. Gertie traced the line of his collarbone with her finger. "We could have missed all this," she said. "If I hadn't come back. If I hadn't fought for you," he finished. She nodded. They had come full circle, not back to where they started, but forward into something new, wiser, deeper, stronger. "This," she whispered, "is the safest I've ever felt. And I promise," Mandy replied, pressing his lips to her forehead, "you'll never feel anything less." Outside, the moon climbed higher over their garden. Inside, love lingered, not in the walls, but in the breath between them, in the warmth of skin on skin, in the quiet knowing that this, right here, was forever. The house had fallen into deep quiet, the kind of stillness that only came after a day filled with everything loud and beautiful. Children's laughter, dancing feet, stories that made you cry and laugh within seconds. Gertie sat at the window in the master bedroom, wrapped in a cotton robe. Her hair was still damp from a late shower. The scent of lavender clung to her skin. Outside, the garden shimmered beneath the moonlight, the lantern still glowing from earlier. One by one, they'd begin to flicker out, but she wasn't ready to turn away just yet. Not tonight. Behind her, Mandy slept, one arm stretched to her side of the bed, a soft, unconscious reach even in rest. Zora had cried briefly earlier, and he'd risen without complaint, changed her, kissed her little forehead, and tucked her back into bed with the tenderness of a man reborn. Gertie watched his chest rise and fall with steady rhythm. He was her constant now, but once he had been a storm. And she had been a shadow under his brilliance, or so she'd been told. She leaned her forehead to the cool window pane and closed her eyes. There were so many versions of her that had died before she ever stepped into this piece. The girl who begged to be chosen, the woman who loved while bleeding internally, the mother who once thought she wasn't strong enough to raise life, let alone love herself. They were gone, and in their place stood someone entirely different. A memory drifted in, the day she left the hospital a year ago, one hand on her stomach, the other clutching a discharge envelope, her eyes scanning a world she thought had no place for her anymore. She'd had no makeup on, no money, no assurance, just the trembling hope that someone, anyone, would see her. And now she stood inside a house full of love, with a man who saw her before she even knew how to ask. A house she had helped build, a name she had reclaimed. "I was never his shadow," she whispered aloud, her voice barely more than a breath. "I was the flame." It wasn't bitterness that colored her reflection. It wasn't pride either. It was truth. She hadn't come this far to glow in someone else's story. She had written her own, and in doing so gave light to Mandy's darkness too, not because she fixed him, but because she allowed herself to shine fully, and he chose to walk beside her in that fire. The flame had always been in her. The courage, the clarity, the love. Even when it flickered, it never died. Even when it was dismissed, it never bowed. Even when she was left alone, it never abandoned her. She smiled to herself, not the kind of smile you share with others, but the kind you earn, the kind that says, "I made it," and not just because of who stood beside her, but because of who she chose to become. She reached for her journal on the nightstand, opened it, and scribbled something in the dark. This chapter closes not with silence but with certainty. I am the fire, the legacy, the name, and every day forward is mine to write. She put the pen down, heart steady. She turned off the lantern switch by the window, dimming the final light outside. Crawled into bed, curled into Mandy's side. His arm automatically wrapped around her. Even in sleep, he knew where she belonged. And as she drifted off, Gertie whispered 3 words, not to him, not to herself, but to the life that was still unfolding. Let's keep rising. If this story moved you, don't scroll without showing love. Comment, "I am the fire," if you've ever had to rebuild yourself when no one else clapped. Hit the like button if Gertie's journey reminded you that healing is not about going back, it's about choosing forward. Share this video with someone who needs to know they were never the shadow either. Every time you engage, it helps us tell more stories of love, strength, and second chances. You are the reason we do this. Thank you for being here. She was never just part of someone else's story. She was the fire that lit her own, and now she burns brighter than ever.